Hey there everyone, welcome back to Imagination Tech. So it's a few days after Christmas and I've built something new on Christmas Day. And it's actually not very new because this was actually my 5-inch drop drone build, but I just transferred it into this Oblivion frame, which I have been looking for quite some time, and I got a really good deal out of this. I think I got it for like $20, $25, around 1,250 pesos for this frame. I actually got 2 frames, but I sold the other one. Anyway, let's go ahead and fly this old spot that I have right now, and no one's here, and let's go ahead and see how this thing flies. That certainly flew better than I expected. It really flew very nice. I haven't tuned this at all since moving it from the Source 2 frame. So let's take this to the bench and let's see what's inside. Alright, so we're now back from the field and it's still in one piece, more or less. I've had this motor come off me and the screws went loose. So this motor flew out, and if you've had a motor go loose from your frame, it's gonna go twist up. So that's what happened here. Anyway, since there's no build log of this Oblivion, because one, I just transplanted the parts from my drone drop build to this, and two, there were a lot of I foresaw a lot of problems fitting everything in here, and trial and error. And I was not wrong. This thing is quite a pain in the ass to build, frankly. But let me go through the things that I did, going through the building of this thing. Another thing is, since the motors are shrouded on the outside, you're gonna have to use just one finger to hold onto your motors when you're screwing and unscrewing these nuts. But aside from that, yeah, it's manageable. So let's just remove all of these props, not that we're gonna put batteries anyway. All right, now we've got more room to manage. I just this top canopy there, it comes in two. So this one has the T, this protrusion over here, and this is this is used for if you're going to be using the GoPro Session or Hero mount. So it just comes with, it has 4 screw holes, but I just put in 2 screws. So I'm just gonna undo these screws. And the other one. Let's go ahead and take a look and see if we can disassemble this. So this is the OlaFPV VTX Assassin. My VTX is there, my Crossfire is there, and I have it wired down there. Let's just remove this pin header. Okay, so it is just a little bit tight. We can remove these antennas as well. Give it a little bit more flexibility. There you go. So once we remove that and it's out of the way, you can see that the flight controller is right here down in the center. So we can just remove these standoffs. Now it's come loose, and we're also going to remove this connector for the camera. And now we have the ESC connector here, which we are also going to try to remove. Okay, so with that out of the way, the first thing you want to, if you're going to be building this for the first time, I would suggest the first thing is to fit on these motors, because you're going to have to fit those wires on those channels, and you're going to have to figure out eventually how they're all going to go in there. If you'll notice, I have my ESC mounted 90 degrees clockwise, and that's because I have this plug header and the power pads, the XT60 pads over here, and that's not going to fit any other way. It's not going to fit forward facing because of these things. So that's a very big consideration. You have to either mount it like this, 90 degrees clockwise, or 90 degrees counterclockwise. So I have my motors, motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, and motor 4 over there. Which means we're going to have to figure out how to get the right signals to this ESC. But before we get there, you're going to want to install your strap, because once your stack is in there, that strap is not going anywhere. So you'd want to put that strap on. So obviously I had to do a lot of trial and error. I put the stack in, then at the end of the build I just realized that I didn't have any strap on. Another thing aside from the strap is you also want to have your SMA adapter in place before everything else, because once the stack is there, it's going to be really cramped, so you might want to get that out of the way. Even this Crossfire antenna, but you know, that thing I just threaded it from the bottom, so that's not as hard a thing as the strap and your SMA adapter. Another thing, if you'll notice, is that my XT60 wires were soldered onto the bottom of the ESC of the ESC, and that's because our canopy has these walls. So I initially had them mounted on top, as I would do by default. However, the canopy wouldn't close, so it was towards the end of the build, and I had to desolder, take off the whole thing, take off the stack, and remove the ESC and desolder these wires and solder them to the bottom and make sure that they still fit in to the stack. And so that's what I did. Now the next thing we want to make sure of is that our flight controller is mounted correctly, or however you want it. So I didn't want to fiddle with the rotation settings in Betaflight or Butterflight in this case. I still wanted my flight controller pointing forward, so that was easily done. I still have this plug header. Just wired it. It's still wired to it's wired to motor 1, motor 2, motor 3, motor 4 in that order, although the pads are 1, 2, 3, 4, and I just swapped them in the resource in Betaflight. So just swap the motor signal resources. Right, so we plug that in, assuming that everything is all set. We plug in our plug header. Okay, so since again it's a very cramped space, you might want to plug in your camera first and then plug in, let's put down our so there's an extra wire I didn't want to get rid of for the camera. I think that's for audio, so just left it there. Right, so I have my VTX in place, my flight controller in place. Another reason why I didn't want it rotated clockwise 90 degrees was because the USB, I wanted it to still be available or accessible from the side, because if you rotate it 90 degrees, then your camera would be in the way. You won't be able to plug this in easily without removing the whole stack, and I didn't want that, and you probably don't want that either. So next up is our VTX and Crossfire via this OlaFPV VTX Assassin. So everything is neatly soldered on this board. Very nice, very handy. And this Oblivion frame can handle a three layer stack, so no problem with that. It is a very tight though, so be mindful of that. So I do believe this is my VTX antenna or my pigtail, VTX pigtail. So I'm just gonna install that there. Alright, now I have both my VTX and my Crossfire plugged in again. Let's take a look at the antennas. So, as I mentioned, this Crossfire antenna, just making sure that I plugged in the right wire. Okay, so this is my Crossfire antenna, and seems I plugged it into the VTX. Let's do a quick switcheroo. Alright, so I have it plugged in the right way. So that's at least something you really want to double check, because if not, you're gonna have a whole lot of headaches. I still have these GPS wires. These are for the GPS, which I was trying to get working on my previous frame, but wasn't able to get it working. Didn't have enough time to work on it yet, but so I just left it there. If I can get it to work, I'll give it a little bit, some more time, see if I can get it to work, but otherwise might just desolder those wires, because they're a pain in the ass, and they look ugly. So it seems one of the motor wires got pulled from that one crash I had. So yeah, so anyway, I'll just solder that back in later. Okay, putting it back in, you'll want to slip that forward. You'll want to slip that through your camera through. Make sure that your wires aren't getting squeezed, because it is going to be a tight squeeze. So these wires are going to be squeezed just a little bit, but not enough to cause any trouble. Alright, so at this point, no need to squeeze that canopy down first. Make sure just screw this a little bit until it protrudes, and then you push it down towards the screw until it catches, and then let the screw do its magic. And that's going to be the easiest way for you to screw down this thing. Now, if you want extra added security, you can use 4 screws instead of just 2, but I think 2 is going to be quite enough. Alright, so I just finished ripping a few packs with this thing, and for an old frame, and really, everything, all of the parts are actually nothing is new. It's actually quite old. Yeah, for an old frame and for old parts, this actually flies really good. And after just a little bit of some PID tuning, I was really able to fly this spot like I have never flown this before. Probably because I've gained a couple of more experiences in the past year. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope if you have this frame and you haven't built it out yet, that you got some tips on how to build this and how to fit all of your parts into this really tight frame. I'm just gonna get this cleaned up and maybe post the GoPro footage from this thing. But anyway, I will leave you with that. And as always, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because I always put out new content. And as usual, click on the like button, make sure you're subscribed, and as always, keep building and keep flying. Happy New Year!